Just a copy is Doug Is Doug or Day to go on to the Tilly
Clay Kintish.
And what other poets, which ones influenced you more than any other?
It's a big question because there's so many. I mean, I like dozens and possibly hundreds of poets, and at different times I've taken from different poets. But when I was starting to write, I would say the two people that influenced me most were both Irish language writers. Sean O'Rear Doyle certainly would have been one, and Michael Davitt, perhaps even more so, because Davitt was the first urban and suburban Irish language poet to write with real conviction out of the kind of life that I was leading myself. So he was a huge figure in terms of making it possible. I mean, almost all writers talk about this. Heaney talks about, Heaney says he was 22 before he felt entitled to write a poem. And it was when he read Patrick Kavanagh's The Great Hunger and realised that that's my world. You know, Maguire and his men on the side of the hill, this is his world. So the moment when you discover another, that somebody else has made poetry out of your world, because otherwise you think, oh, if I grew up on a farm in Derry like Seamus Heaney, I could write poems, or if I lived in South America where there was a revolution in progress, then it'd be dead easy. The hard thing is to realise that it's here, all around you, and anybody that can open up your own world to you and show it back to you in poems is a liberating influence. So Davitt, I would say, more than anyone else.
Sean, talking about rhythm, is rhythm very important part of your document?
I think it is. I think it's. I think the rhythms are irregular, but they're there nonetheless. And I think it is ultimately the final thing that distinguishes poetry from prose. Is there doesn't have to be metre as such, but there has to be some kind of a rhythm, and the rhythm should be the speaking voice knocking against some other. That's put under some kind of pressure, so it's not flaccid. And I like to think, at least, I think I'm becoming more aware of it than I would have been when I started off. When I started off writing, I thought imagery was by far the most important thing. I still think that's probably the case, but rhythmic language, yeah. What do you think yourself?
Well, if this got an outtake, they don't seem to have much rhyme in the Irish poetry. It's the rhythm.
Yeah.
As you say, it's probably the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a lot more, if you were to look at them on the page, there's a lot more rhyme than is evident, so I'm actually quite flattered that you thought otherwise, because that's part of the challenge, is to mute the rhyme so that the speaking voice comes across it, and deliberately not to read the poem so that it emphasises the rhymes. Most of those poems that I read this evening are rhymed quite carefully.
No,
Cúlú faoi dá a scríobh Henry Lawson on Tidal when the Irish flag went by.
Near New Fula, on your lady.
It's
feudal
Oh, sure. I came across a poem, I don't know where I got it, by Henry Lawson when the Irish flag went by. It's a marvellously stirring poem.
Great.
That was my root.
Great.
I get it in Fianna. But I sent it, among other things, to Monsignor O'Fianna, Father O'Fianna. And you see, he cobbled together Glór na Mair. And Glór na Mair was the organisation that runs the Comortas family. That was the poor Common Gael and Hospital that Trús Orcha in Leon. So the Curtis Scale of Quillen. And then I sent him on the lens as well. I meet him from time to time, and he was so taken by that poem.
Great.
He's going to publish in the next edition of his little book, The Saga.
With his own translation then?
I'd love you to have a copy of it, and to translate it into Irish.
But is he going to translate it himself for publication in his magazine?
Oh, no.
He's not.
I'd love you to translate it.
Okay, alright,
Just because you're talking about the read on stuff and sort of being ungracious because it felt gracious. if somebody is in that context of feeling in that regard of poetry, what's your idea on conceptual right to do it anyway, to feel gracious, to give it a go?
Of writing poetry?
Or whatever.
Yeah, again, I think there's part of there's an obstacle there, and it comes about largely because of this, what we've inherited as a model of the poet and a model of poetry is the romantic idea of these extraordinarily tormented people, and unless you're deeply tormented, you shouldn't really attempt to write poetry. And that's a relatively new thing. But it's a very disabling thing for people, and I think poetry is, everybody is capable of writing poetry in the same way that everybody is capable of kicking a football or playing cricket. Not everybody is going to do it to the same level or commit themselves to the same level, but there's no reason why anybody can't. There's no reason why anybody can't paint or tell a joke, and there's no special, I mean, there are certain skills that you acquire along the way, but this idea that they have to be, that there's a whole equipment that you have to either have innate in you, which is usually what people think, or that you have to have studied it. I think that's an impediment to the reading of poetry as much as it is to the writing of it. Because again, there's this idea that it's a rarefied, specialised thing, and yeah, there should be no impediment to it. I think most children, if they're encouraged to write poetry, see no reason why they wouldn't. And in fact, for them, rhyme and regular metre is part of the attraction of it. It comes more easily to them to write in that way than to write without the support of metre and acquired rhythm.
It seems like children are actually more natural in a sense with poetry, because if you listen to children skipping rope, and they're always saying some rhyme or reading some rhyme or something as they're skipping the rope.
Yep.
One thing happens to another thing. And it just seems so natural, and I think in a sense we can all be inspired by that.
Okay. Mira, pues,